bow is such a huge topic, and I could talk about it forever, and I'm sure there's so much that I could still learn about how to use the bow. So this here is just a few rules to help you get started and get a handle on the basics of what the bow is about and how it works and how we write in the music to show what we want the bow to do. The role of the bow is to create sound from the cello. So I can pluck the string. And the plucking starts the vibration of the string, but then as you can hear, it dies away. But when I use the bow, I can use it to sustain the sound. So the bow is causing the string to vibrate, but continuously. Also, the bow has a stick made of wood, it has a tip, and the frog. And if I'm moving the bow towards the tip, I'm playing what we call a down bow. And if I move the bow in the direction towards the frog, I'm playing an up bow. There isn't really one very particular way to hold the bow, but there is sort of a general way to do it. And that is to drape the fingers over the front of the frog, and then the thumb goes on the back. The thumb should be bent a little tiny bit so that it has some give and you don't get any tension throughout this muscle. And that's about it. After that, there are lots of slight variations, and there are many different schools of thought as well as different bodies and hands holding the bow. How much bow we use when we play depends on how fast our bow goes, the length of the note in terms of how many beats we're holding it, and also how many notes we need to put into one bow before we change directions. So I'm going to play an example. This is the opening to the Scottish tune Loch Lomond, and this time around I'm going to play it all with separate bows, meaning that every note is going to be played in a different direction. So I'll change direction with each new note. So in that example, you could see when I played, I needed the most bow to play this note, and not so much bow to play the following note. And the rest of the passage was played with fairly short bows as well. As you can see, when it comes to playing individual notes on the bow, we don't necessarily travel all the way from one end of the bow all the way to the other, because sometimes we just don't need to get the sound that we want. In terms of where we start on the bow, as cellists, we tend to hang out in this area of the bow as a default. As you could see, when I played the opening of Loch Lomond, I played it mostly in this part of the bow. Something else you might notice is I started on an up bow, so that is traveling toward the frog. I just didn't need to start very far out in the bow because I was only going to use a short amount of bow on that first note, like so. And the reason I chose to start on an up bow is because that very first note is the note prior to the downbeat. So if this is our beat, then the tune really starts on da, 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 da. And the very first note is just a pickup to all that. It's like a note that happens before the very first beat comes. So if I were to count it in 4, I would say 1, 2, 3, and then on 4, play my up bow, and then that means I'm ready to start on beat 1 playing my down bow. So that would happen like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So generally speaking, we use down bows to play down beats. It's very common when learning to play the cello from the very beginning that we play each individual note on a separate bow, meaning that we change bows for each note that comes along. So that's what I've been doing in these examples. But now let's put more than one note into a bow. So here's an example of that. 1, 2, 3. So in this example, you can see that I grouped many of the notes into 2 per bow. I still did the single note pickup on beat 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's my downbeat, 1. But then I put the next 2 notes together, and then a separate, and then 2 together, and then 2 and 2. And then 2 together, 3 separate, 2 together. And that works out really nicely in terms of when the downbeats come and me wanting to play on a down bow for those moments. And also the kind of emphasis I want to give to the different notes in the phrase. So I want that first note to be emphasized, and this one especially, the downbeat. But then these 2 sound nice together, and these 2, and then putting these in groups of 2. But why don't I try it one more time and put those groupings of 2 together, and I'll make them a grouping of 4. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. So I put those back-to-back groupings of 2 into one grouping of 4, and then I changed a little something at the end there as well.